Hey Paul, how are you doing today?
Yeah, great, Ari. Good to see you again.
Good seeing you again as well. So thanks everyone for joining this session with us. Special thanks to Nicole, Lucian, Paula, the rest of the team at TTC for having us here. Like we said, we're going to talk about how to expand the definition of well-being across other vectors, in this case, mobility. Let's start by talking a little bit about us. My name is Ari Peralta. I'm the founding partner at Arigami. We are a research and innovation studio that focuses on well-being. We are based in London, and we help partners and collaborators across markets strategize, measure, validate, and prototype well-being solutions. We have an interdisciplinary expertise. So with well-being, we're looking at different layers and understanding the complexities involved and how to simplify that in an accurate, compelling way. We work across sectors including hospitality, healthcare, architecture, and mobility. And earlier this year, I had the pleasure and opportunity for us to work with Paul and Tom Middleton for a great project with Nissan. Paul, can you tell us a little bit more about your incredible work at NTC?
Okay, so yeah, I'm Paul Speed Andrews. So as Nicole said, I'm the manager for noise and vibration development as well as aerodynamics at Nissan Technical Centre Europe. At NTCE, our main responsibility is the development and delivery and lifecycle management of all the Nissan vehicles sold in Europe and manufactured in Europe. My own personal responsibility is obviously looking at the noise and vibration, sort of both the traditional side of making the cars more refined and smooth, but actually more increasingly now it's about the quality of the sound and sort of enhancing that driver experience that we're obviously all talking about and keen to talk about more today.
So the Nissan Dream Drive project brought us together for something quite unique. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that project, the goal and what we came up with?
So yeah, absolutely. Dream Drive was a little bit of a departure for me in terms of my core business is actually physically delivering cars. Dream Drive was more of a conceptual research project. So the idea came from a conversation about how people were known to take babies for a drive in the evening to help them sleep and calm them. It's like a well-known thing, certainly in Europe anyway. And there was a comment that one of the things that helped soothe the baby and bring them to sleep was the low frequency and the tonal noise from the combustion engine, which then got us thinking, well, what happens now in an electric vehicle world where that engine sound has gone? So the whole concept of Dream Drive was to develop and effectively compose a set of audio tracks that would take over that soothing sound for the baby. And the interesting aspect of this, working with sound designer and composer Tom Middleton, we actually recorded every sound came from an actual sound on the Leaf, our electric vehicle. So yeah, we spent a day at our technical centre in Europe recording a great number of different sounds, the sound of the motor driving, sound of the switches operating, doors, windows, all that. And Tom created this fantastic track, which you can download, which acts as that sort of soothing soundtrack that anyone can download and then play through their car.
You know, Paul, this is what's really exciting that we want to share with the audience. You probably never thought of the automobile or the vehicle as a possible space for wellness and well-being. And the case is now with autonomous driving, what's going to happen when we stop driving? This is going to leave this incredible open canvas for us to recreate experiences in car. Now, I want to talk about functional sound. We both have a lot of experience with music and sound in our own careers, but can you tell me about your own personal passion and how that plays a role in your role at Nissan?
Yeah, so away from work, I'm a keen musician, so I play the piano. Actually, I've refound a love for it during lockdown, so I spent quite a lot of time playing that, and also playing a traditional British brass band. Again, we're not actually playing at the moment because of the COVID situation, but yes, I find music a really good way to relax, and I just love the emotion of the way music can affect both myself and the audience. Bringing that into a professional environment, I've done a number of keen projects where historically we've looked at how to enhance the sound of a combustion engine, so in particular enhancing the sporty sound, making it a more engaging and more emotional experience. And now obviously we're trying to extrapolate that to actually what does it mean for electric vehicles and in particular autonomous drive. How can we use the sound of a car to communicate better with the customer and enhance that driving experience and just enrich the experience for our customers?
Now, electrification has changed so much for automobiles, right? And in particular for Nissan, who really was one of the pioneers bringing EVs to the market, and most recently with the Aria long-range SUV.
Absolutely.
I think it's 300 kilometers, right?
Yeah.
So
300 miles in years, yeah.
It's really interesting to look at this new way of approaching sound. And this is what we call functional sound, where it serves a purpose. And right now we're looking at ways to explore how to use sound to enhance in-cabin experience, but ultimately how to optimize and enhance our health. Now, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. And it's interesting to talk about these different factors that are influencing change in automotive, because a lot of them have nothing to do with automotive. And some of those factors include fractional ownership and the new role the sharing economy is playing. Another huge factor is the aging population. So we want healthy aging, and we're looking at how can we integrate biometrics and sensors into the vehicle to, again, diagnose intuitively what the conditions are for the driver. In this case, maybe the passenger, since there won't be any more drivers. Could you tell us a little bit more about automation? I mean, we've been talking about it for several years. We know there's several levels on it. Can you just expand a little bit for our audience?
Sure. So, I mean, in very simple terms, autonomous drive is just the ability where the car actually drives for you. So, in its full extreme, you don't have to do anything. You have no steering wheel. You're effectively a passenger, and the car does all the driving. Obviously, that's a fair way away yet, but the first stages of autonomous drive are in our vehicles, and most OEMs now are producing autonomous cars. The ProPilot system that we have in our cars currently is working in multiple lane highway and A roads, but we're obviously making a lot of research and development in other areas. And there's one particular project that's just been completed by our team, our research team in NTCE, is the Human Drive project. And the main focus of this project was to try to make a more human driving experience, and by this I mean a more natural driving experience. So if I just sort of pose a rhetorical question, but I mean, who here is a nervous driver, a nervous passenger? If you're a passenger in a car and you don't necessarily trust the driver, or they maybe drive a little erratically or do something unexpected, it makes you uneasy. So we translate that to now a machine. The car is driving for you. What would it take to make you relax and trust that driver? So the Human Drive project was recording thousands of hours of humans driving in real scenes in Europe. Some of those more complex scenes that we see in Europe, things like narrow twisting roads, quite often with poor lighting or no signage or no lines. And there's more complicated scenarios. And just recording what the driver does, how he reacts to certain scenarios, and try and replicate it. So yeah, that was the main focus of Human Drive, and just trying to improve the experience of an autonomous drive.
Now, I asked this question in the beginning of our session, and I'm going to throw it out again to our audience. What do you think happens when people stop driving? And we've looked and worked with several auto executives, several brands, several organizations, researchers, and futurists, trying to predict what are these issues. And part of what we believe is going to happen is that when we stop driving, we're going to have a decreased sense of agency. Basically, we will become all the passengers, and what happens when we're no longer the driver. This corresponds also to a loss of identity, at least how we look at vehicles today, right? We identify a lot. For example, one of the brands out there talk about the ultimate driving machine, right? Well, but if you're not driving, what's that about? So we're going to see a loss of identity as well. And in particular in cabin, if we're not driving, we're going to be really bored. So we're going to be really looking for new solutions to distract us, which is interesting because it's like these two paradigms are happening at the same time, right? On one side, companies like Nissan, together we're looking at how to increase focus and attention and get that driver safety there. But outside of driver safety, this is where well-being comes about. And well-being is complex. It's a very large umbrella term. But as Nicole and the rest of the TTC team have set out with this conference, we're trying to redefine it. And by redefining it, we have to go back and look at the difference between wellness and well-being. And when we look at wellness, we're talking about an industry, right? Often talked about as a lifestyle and all these other things. But when we talk about well-being, we're focusing on outcome. And I think that's what's really interesting in the automotive industry, because right now everything is about measuring and capturing. And based on that measurement and capture, hopefully creating new systems that are more intuitive and more enjoyable. But outside of this human comfort, which is where it started, right? In ergonomics, in terms of the seats, the air conditioning, then we have moved to safety conscious, which is, again, where we're looking at how to ensure that the driver and sometimes people outside the vehicle are safe. Now, you guys were involved in another sound project. I believe it was when the Leaf came out, and some new regulations in Europe required certain types of sounds for the car outside.
Sure.
So pretty silent. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so obviously it's fairly well documented that there was a perceived increased risk for pedestrians from these basically silence of electric vehicles, especially at low speed. And so regulations, they led quite strongly in the US, developed a requirement for an exterior sound. One of the things that we discussed internally was obviously we've been striving to make cars quieter for years, and now we're being told we have to make them louder again. So how do you make a responsible exterior noise without damaging the environment? Because obviously everyone suddenly now thinks you've got hundreds of cars making lots of noises, and it suddenly becomes sort of a horrible place to be in an urban scenario. So the project that we worked on was known as Evader, which was all about how to mitigate those risks. So it looked at things like rather than emitting the sound as a uniform field, we had like a beam forming array, which means we can direct sound at individuals. We had camera systems which monitored pedestrians and people moving around, and like a risk estimator. So if a pedestrian was at high risk of maybe wandering into the path of the car, then we could direct sound directly at them without actually making noise elsewhere in the environment. It was enhanced by ambient noise detection. So in a very quiet environment, we can play a quieter sound. When it's a very noisy environment, we can raise the volume levels. And again, there were further enhanced things like using GPS if you're in a high risk situation. So if you're outside a school around school start or closing time, then you're at a higher risk than if you're in the same place in the middle of the night, for example. So using all that kind of information, trying to give the the best, most responsible signal to the observers around. So not just looking at what the car sounds like for the occupant, but actually, more importantly, what it sounds like for observers and pedestrians.
Sound spatialization is something that we intimately work with, and something that we're seeing as a trend across different markets. We're seeing that in retail design. We're seeing that in hospitality as well. But it's interesting because with the vehicle, we're talking about a moving vessel. And, we've always looked at this vessel as a means of transportation to getting from point A to point B, just like we've looked at other modes of transportation, like boats and planes and trains. What's interesting is that, I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to start really shifting out of this one-dimensional view towards transportation. In other words, we're going to find many, many more benefits that we can seek to either optimize our performance, to either balance out our mood, or to improve any other kind of functional human ability. Some of the other things that is interesting that's kind of making its way into automotive is that, you know, the wellness industry, we're almost talking about $5 trillion industry. It's everywhere. You know, wellness is not a trend. It's something that we're embedding into everything that we do. And while right now, you know, in automotive, we may hear some things talking about mood and performance, you know, we're still a long ways away from that. But that is what's going to lead towards this idea and concept of health awareness and driver health, where we're integrating monitoring of biometrics, things like heart rate, breathing rate, etc. We've seen some of these technologies developed in concept cars, including some of the concept cars that Nissan has made. When do you think some of these technologies will actually make it into our driveway?
It's hard to say specifically. I mean, obviously, there's a number of these kind of technologies already coming in. So we already have systems that monitor alertness of the driver. So if your driving behavior is slightly erratic or out of character, then you can have a little warning pop up to just to make sure you're alert. This kind of things. We have like massage seat kind of functions that will just keep you mobile, keep you alert. In terms of the next generation, I think the next 3 to 5 years, you'll start to see quite a few of this, you know, health monitoring. So things like checking your blinking rate and things like that. So how alert are you?
Now, there's going to be some new players that are going to be involved in this market, and we want to share and give like a bit of a preview as to how different these players are. Right? They're unexpected. One of them that we've brought up is cable companies. So, you know, cars are moving computers now. And with fiber optic networks, you know, you're going to need to update on the go, literally. And, you know, technologies like 5G will enhance that ability to do that. But then we were talking about earlier in the green room, a different player. And we're talking about smart buildings, smart cities, enterprise architecture, and, you know, and IoT. Tell me more about that evolution within vehicles at Nissan in terms of how much is IoT playing a role?
So yeah, ultimately our cars are becoming more and more connected. So already we're having cars connected to our mobile phones. We're downloading data and communicating with our car in a different way. For the next generation of autonomy, certainly in an urban environment, it's inevitable that actually we're going to have to communicate with other cars. We're going to have to communicate with the environment, with the infrastructure. So it's another area of research that we're working on. There's a project we're working on in London with a number of another consortium known as Serve City, which is again looking at autonomy in that urban environment and what the infrastructure needs to look like. And then, of course, we've got to turn around and make all this practical and affordable for the customer. So it's all very well having, you know, thousands of pounds worth of sensors and you know, complex infrastructure, but actually somebody's got to pay for it. So you know, one of the key activities is just how do we deliver this at an affordable price that customers will actually want to adopt in their vehicles.
You know, to be a player in this market is not easy. And I can attest to that, right? And you and the rest of the team at NTCE have been wonderful at really embracing innovators and helping us help you. You know, and I think that symbiosis is great. Now, for those out there that haven't been involved with automotive, it might seem just unattainable, just inaccessible. But we believe that to be a player in this in-car well-being market, you have to shift from static to dynamic. That's the first thing. You have to bring more dynamicism into the industry. And as we said earlier, innovation rarely happens from within. This is why we're here. And I really thank you so much, and Nissan, for being here with us, spreading this message that, hey, we need to reimagine transportation together. Together we can unlock human potential, but this is going to mean that we have to redefine transportation, redesign interiors, reshape the industry, and bring new players along. We have a very special gift that we've been working on together with the TTC family, and we've created a report on From Driving to Being, a future outlook on well-being in transport. And many of the things that we've discussed here in this fireside chat will be on that report. But stay tuned. We will send that to you, I believe, in the next few days. But we're super excited that Nicole and the team have given us an opportunity to really present a whole nother platform of multisensory, of well-being, of transformational spaces. Thank you.